It is officially NBA All-Star season. The starters will be announced on the 25th, the reserves on February 1st. It is one of the most exciting times of the year if you like basketball. And without further ado, I'm not going to waste any time. Let's show some love to these NBA All-Stars. Let's start off here in the Eastern Conference. As you see it in the top left, Tyrese Halliburton and Donovan Mitchell are going to be my starting backcourt in the Eastern Conference. Of course, you can argue Tyrese Maxey in there as well, but this is also a good time for me to mention to you guys at home. If you stay to the end of the video, we always give out our snub team awards. So if you guys want to stay to that, we just acknowledge about 12 to 20 other players that could be NBA All-Stars this upcoming season. But Tyrese Halliburton, to me, no doubt, this is a guy that could be an All-NBA guard, as he's the lead guard on one of the best offenses in NBA history. I guess currently it's the best offense in NBA history, even though every single year these offenses get better and better, and we say that every year about a different unit. But Tyrese Halliburton, no doubt about it. I mean, unlike other guards that can go out there and get you 20 and 10, 30 and 10, this is a guy that does it efficiently, and not only efficiently, but he takes care of the basketball. So to me, he's the leader of one of the best offenses, the best offense in NBA history, and a large part of why this team is in the mix to be a sneaky dark horse contender this year is because of Tyrese Halliburton. I mean, he's shooting 50, 40, 90 while giving you 24 points, 12 assists. And again, less than a turnover a game, which is insane for a lead guard in today's ball. Tyrese Halliburton not only is an all-star starter, could be an all-NBA guy at this point in the season. For Donovan Mitchell, it might shock you guys. I understand if you want to be up in arms over why he's over a guy like Tyrese Maxey, but hey, I'm a Cavs fan and I'm going to show some love to the hometown guy. This is a guy that is averaging 28, 5, 6, and 2 steals a game. This is a guy that's having a career year scoring wise, 28 points a game. He's on one of, well, I guess the hottest team in basketball in the Cleveland Cavaliers. They've won 8 straight. They're 13 and 2 without Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. This is a guy that just year in and year out is one of those top 12 to 15 players, scoring machine. And he's just one of those few guys that you could be here, Donovan Mitchell. Go get us a bucket. Carry us to a win. Carry us to win this series. And he's done all of that multiple times throughout his career already. He's just such a special player. And to me, he's keeping this Cavs team afloat. And for that reason, I'm going to have him as a starter here in the Eastern Conference over a guy like Tyrese Maxey, because it's hard to be it's hard to be the secondary option on a good team, but it's also harder to be the guy on the team, and which is Donovan Mitchell is, right? But then we move over to the front court, and I think this is a lot less controversial. It's pretty cut and dry. We have Jason Tatum, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and the reigning Joel Embiid, the reigning MVP, soon to be second, back-to-back MVP in Joel Embiid. But starting here with Jason Tatum, he was my preseason MVP pick in the Eastern Conference. Of course, I said he was going to be one of the best players on one of the best teams, and they are exactly that. All of their offseason acquisitions have come to work beautifully into the 2023-2024 season. They only have one loss at home, which came recently. But overall, Jason Tatum, I mean, 27, 8, and 4, shooting 48% from the field and 37% from three. Both of those are career highs, by the way. Jason Tatum, again, best player on one of the best teams. He definitely deserves to be an all-star starter. For Giannis Antetokounmpo, I mean, he's giving you 31, 12, and 6 with a steal and a half a game, shooting 60% from the field, which is also a career high for Mr. Antetokounmpo. But this is a guy that, is on the second best team in the Eastern Conference, and a lot of people are viewing it as a kind of a down year or down start to the year for the Milwaukee Bucks. And there's good reason, right? New coach, new star talent in Dame, and of course, Adrian Griffin. There was definitely going to be a mesh period between the grouping there, but it's the worst defense in the Giannis Antetokounmpo era as far as him being a starter. Regardless, again, we knew that meshing period was going to be there with Dame and Adrian Griffin making that appearance, right? Regardless, as far as an all-star ballot, I mean, these two guys, for as far as Giannis and Embiid, they're going to be here until they leave the Eastern Conference, or unless they get hurt, of course. But Giannis, he's the MVP candidate, even though he's not a front runner. He's always going to be in that conversation. And to me, he is an all-star starter. For Joel Embiid, he just dropped 70 points last night. Do I need another argument? I don't know if I need another argument. But of course, number 21 for the 76ers, City of Brotherly Love, is having a career year across the board. He's leading the league in points per game, but he's still averaging 36 points a game, 12 rebounds, 6 assists, all career highs. And this is a guy that is currently the MVP frontrunner to win it in back-to-back seasons. Joel Embiid is just an amazing player, arguably a top 5 player in today's game. You could argue even the best player in today's game. I want to go that far. But Joel Embiid is such a special talent, and he just put up the most points in a single game in 76ers history. Passing, by the way, one of those mythical basketball creatures in Wilt Chamberlain. Joel Embiid's such a special player, and to me, no doubt, an all-star starter. The only way he's not is if he leaves the Eastern Conference. But let's go over to the Western Conference starters, man, and we're going to start here. And again, this is very controversial, and I think this year is going to be such a pivotal year for the All-Star game when we look back at things, because I think this is the final year where we're going to have positions in the NBA All-Star game. We've seen the All-NBA teams go the route of positionless. And I think this year, especially with the guy that has to come off the bench in the Western Conference, we're really going to start going to positionless basketball as far as all-star starters. For Luka Doncic, though, I mean, no doubt about it. 34, 8, and 9, a steal and a half, shooting 38% from three. I said it a couple weeks ago. A 20-point triple-double is an off night for Luka Doncic. I just think he's the top 3 player in the world today. This is a guy that, next to Kyrie, I think this is the best basketball as a unit that he's played as a Dallas Maverick. And I think this team is a definitely dark horse contender because they have 77, and 77 gives you life on any team. I think I can go out there and play the Tim Hardaway role. I'm not as good as Tim Hardaway, but I can go play that role, and I'm still going to go to the second round of the playoffs because 77 is so special. It's just very fun to watch this Mavericks team play. I'd like to see a move or two at the deadline to take them to that next level as far as playoff time. But as of right now, playoff or all-star selection time, Luka Doncic, no doubt, top 3 player in the world and will be an all-star starter in 2024. For Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, though, 31 points a game, and that's not even a career high. He's averaging 6 rebounds, 6 assists, 2.5 steals, shooting 55% for the floor. All 4 of those are career highs, and I haven't even gotten to the reason why he should be an all-star starter. He's the leader, the best player, a top 3 MVP candidate, and he's leading the youngest team in basketball to a top 2 seed in the Western Conference. There's not a lot of wrong you can say about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I mean, not only is he a fashion icon off the court, but he's going to razzle and dazzle, and he's going to make you look silly on the court. This guy is just such a fun player to watch, and I really have to shout out to Bakari every time I mention Shai, because when he got drafted by the Clippers, I said, okay, I can see him being, a dominant scoring 6-man kind of guy. I didn't see this superstardom from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. My boy Bakari, he saw it from day one, and of course, props to him. Of course, it's not often you see that potential in someone, especially with their first few years in the league. But Shai has been everything for the Thunder team and more, and I think right now he should be the second in the MVP front running voting, right? Behind, of course, Joel Embiid, who just dropped 70 points. But Shai, no doubt, could be all NBA, and he is no doubt an all-star starter. Let's move over to the rest of the Western Conference starters. Of course, in the front court, we have LeBron James, Kevin Durant. These 2 guys have been here for so many years. At this point, I don't even know, to count, right, how many times they've been here. But then, of course, the best player in ball in Nikola Jokic. But for LeBron James, he's still having his, LeBron James kind of year, 25, 7, and 8. But it is the most efficient shooting year of his career in year 19 or year 21. Excuse me, not 19, 21. LeBron James has been spectacular this year. However, I can see the argument where, as far as LeBron and Kevin Durant, you can say, hey, their teams are just not winning enough games to be an all-star starter. And in that case, I would understand. I guess it would classify to me, what do you classify Luka as? Is he a wing or is he a guard? And if he's a wing, then one of these guys definitely gets knocked down to the bench. But LeBron is the best player on a team that has the potential to go to the Western Conference Finals like we saw last year. They just need to get it in the right direction. And I think that starts with a head coaching spot. But LeBron James, incredible year, incredible player, still top 10 in the league, in my opinion. But again, his team success could definitely vary your your opinion here about LeBron. But again, he is the fan vote. It's LeBron James. As long as he's in the league, he will be a starter. For Kevin Durant, 29, 6, and 6, shooting 47% from 3. It's almost a coin flip for this man when he shoots from behind the arc. And not to mention, he's a 7-footer, a 7-foot guy with handles, and he's shooting 50% from the 3-point line. There's just not a lot you can do to stop a demigod kind of player like Kevin Durant. And again, he fits into that same mold with LeBron James, where these teams have the talent, but they're not producing like they have that talent as far as their record, as they're both kind of in limbo there between like the 7 and 11 seeds here in the Western Conference. Regardless, we know both of these guys are the leaders of those teams, and we know both of those guys are such special talents that can, just turn on this switch where they're winning basketball games for their teams single-handedly. So LeBron James, Kevin Durant, I think just for how great they've played on their teams, they will be all-star starters. They also carry the name value, of course. And then for Nikola Jokic, it's kind of a down year. And a down year for Nikola Jokic is a 26 point, 12 rebound, 10 assist year. It's absolutely crazy. This is a guy that has kind of been in cruise control this year, and the team is still top three in the Western Conference. Nikola Jokic, no doubt, best player in basketball, and he is here. Has his team as a top three seed, while his second best player has missed a good portion of the start of the year. We'll talk about that guy as far as all-star snubs later on in the video. But Nikola Jokic, to me, no doubt, is an all-star starter. It's almost a lock at this point in the year. But then we move over to the bench, and this is the guy I was talking about, Anthony Edwards. This is the guy that's averaging 26, 5, and 5, shooting 47% from three. 46% from the field, 39 from three, excuse me. But he is the leader on the best team in the Western Conference, a Western Conference that is stacked top to bottom. And we're going to talk about a lot of those guys at the bottom there in the reserves or even in the snub list later on in the video. But Anthony Edwards has just been on a different level this year. He's taking that next step into superstardom. And a lot of people, you see him comparing him to MJ, comparing him to Vince Carter, to Tracy McGrady, even sometimes Kobe Bryant. A lot of guys see the potential in Anthony Edwards, and I think no doubt, this year has really been that coming on party. A lot of people had this team as a 7, 8, 9, 10 seed, missing the play-in even, and now they're the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, and they look like one of the most dangerous teams in basketball because of that defense. Offense hasn't been there as a team perspective, but defense, this Timberwolves team looks elite, and I think when it comes to playoff time, we know Anthony Edwards is such an elite playoff performer. This team can be scary, especially with home court advantage. However, the reason I want to talk about the positionless thing is because Anthony Edwards should be an all-star starter this year. I think he deserves it more than LeBron. I think he deserves it more than Kevin Durant. But with how kind of positions are laid out in the all-star starter, you have 2 guards and you have three front court players, excuse me. And I think Anthony Edwards just unfortunately is a guard, and he is unfortunately behind Luka Doncic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 2 of the top 10, top 12 basketball players in the world today. But I think, after this year, they might go to positionless. But of course, you always have to be careful with that. You don't want 5 guards or 5 bigs running around the all-star court. But then Steph Curry, again, this is a guy that is like LeBron and Kevin Durant. He kind of, gets, a bypass due to the team's success because of the name value, because he's such a legend, and because we know the kind of player that he is. Steph Curry is still, despite being on a team that is abysmal, averaging 27, 5, and 5. Of course, shooting great from the field because it is Steph Curry. I will say it has been a kind of a down year, even though the numbers won't say that. It has been a down year for Stephen Curry as far as team perspective, but also just from a personal perspective. You can tell that he doesn't look as dominant as he was last year and the year prior. Regardless, Steph is still amazing, arguably a top 10 player of all time. And for all that he's had to go through with this Warriors team and this Warriors front office, I'm going to give him a little vacation. I'm going to have him come over to Indianapolis, and I'm going to have him play in the All-Star game as a little treat as being the only relevant player on that Warriors unit. But then for De'Aaron Fox, again, this could be controversy, but again, 28, 4, and 6, averaging almost 2 steals a game, shooting 40% from 3. One of his biggest early career flaws has now turned into one of his best career traits, right? Or attributes is a good way to put it. But De'Aaron Fox, again, he's just becoming more of an all-around player. You can argue, is he the best player on his team? Is he not? Is he the second best player on his team? Regardless, right? That's a different conversation for a different day. In the backcourt, to me, I think he deserves it over guys like Jamal Murray because of the missed time. I think he deserves it over some other guards on the bench like Kyrie Irving or Devin Booker. I would personally give it to Swipa because, of course, it's one thing to have expectations coming into the year, but it's another thing to live up to them. And De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis have done that for the Sacramento Kings, and they are back in the mix as far as competing for a playoff spot. I will say, they do need to start finishing some games to become an elite team because this is a team that's blown so many leads this year. But even with that said, they're still top four in the Western Conference. But then we move over to the reserves of the Western Conference as far as the front court position. And again, this could be controversial. But again, all this whole video is at the end of the day. But I think all four of these guys definitely deserve an all-star reserve spot. For Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, they're averaging nearly identical stats, 24 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists for both of those guys. Both guys are shooting 50% from the field, and both guys are shooting above 40% from three. This Clippers team is scary. I think they're my current favorite to go out of the Western Conference if, of course, everyone stays healthy. I just think, two dominant two-way wings. Of course, we know the type of players that Kawhi and Paul George are, and no doubt to me, just due to their early season success and the fact that both of these guys have had questions about, well, can their body holds up for an entire season. We haven't seen Kawhi Leonard miss any time this year. Paul George barely any. I think both of those guys coming into the year playing each and every night is really a special treat for us NBA fans. And I think as a result, they're all-star reserves. Of course, they always, they have the potential. You can argue Kawhi being an all-star starter. Paul George, same thing. I'm not going to bat an eye, but regardless, they are an all-star here in 2024. And then for Domantas Sabonis, same story as De'Aaron Fox, right? I think I'll start by saying Domantas Sabonis is having a career year, and I think it's going under the radar, which is criminal at this point in the year. But 20 points, 13 rebounds, 9 assists, shooting 61% from the field, 42% from three. Again, as a big man, I know the attempts are only around 2 a game, but still shooting 42% from three is really impressive as a big man, given the fact that he's also the facilitator of this offense. He still rebounds the ball at one of the highest rates in the NBA. Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox deserve their flowers for keeping this team where they're at because this team doesn't have the depth they had last year. And I think their depth is showing this year. I would watch out to see this team be very active at the deadline. But Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox deserve their flowers, and I think they're both reserves here in the Western Conference. And then we have Anthony Davis, and the only, when you look at his numbers and you look at his impact on the court, you're like, man, no doubt, this dude should be a starter in the Western Conference. However, I found it really hard to give 2 starters to a team that is below 500 at this point in the season. So Anthony Davis is, as a result, a reserve, still averaging 25, 12, 4, 2.5 blocks, looking like Kentucky Anthony Davis. Regardless, I think, this is a guy that has been playing amazing this year. He's been shooting very well as far as on the perimeter, which is going underrated. But this team just hasn't figured it out as far as the win column. And I think that is going to hurt the arguments of LeBron to be a starter, for AD to be a starter. Regardless, we know that these two guys, when they're healthy and they're playing their best, are top 5 caliber players in the world. But those are my Western Conference bench. Let's get over to the Eastern Conference bench. And let's start in the backcourt with Tyrese Maxey, arguably could be a starter. Jalen Brunson, arguably could be a starter. And Damian Lillard, I've seen some people have him as a starter. I wouldn't go that far. Regardless, all 3 guys have had amazing starts to the year. Obviously, that's why they're on today's video. But Tyrese Maxey, 26 points, 4 rebounds, 7 assists, and a steal a game. Of course, stepping in the void of James Harden. That was the biggest question for the Sixers team coming into the year. We're losing James Harden, a Hall of Famer, first ballot, one of the best facilitators we've ever seen in today's game, and we're losing him. And who is going to step up and fill that void to keep this team afloat? Because we know Joel Embiid is going to be Joel Embiid, but we need that secondary star, right? And Tyrese Maxey has been all of that. Of course, I read you his stats, but again, he's the second best player on one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. They deserve 2 All-Stars, and Tyrese Maxey is an all-star, and whether the record reflected it or not. So he deserves his flowers here. Jalen Brunson, I really thought he could have an argument to be a starter. 26, 4, and 6, a steal in a game, shooting 43% from 3. This is a guy that is having a career year across the board. just like Tyrese Maxey. And I take stats, into account, when it comes to situations like this where they're having career years. They deserve their flowers at the midseason mark. And again, Brunson, Maxey, two guys that are, in a sense, lead guards on their team. And Jalen Brunson, to me, is the best player on this Knicks team that could be scary come playoff time if they continue to make some another move or two here at the deadline. But Jalen Brunson, just such a special player at his height and his frame. He's still getting it done at this elite level. Shout out to Jalen Brunson, man. I don't think he gets enough flowers, even though he's in New York. But then for Damian Lillard, 25, 4, and 7. It's a Damian Lillard kind of year. We know there was going to be some mesh period, coming over from Portland as the lead guy to Milwaukee as a secondary star. Regardless, I think, this is a down year for Dame, but an elite year statistically wise for almost 90% of the league, right? But Damian Lillard still, he deserves his flowers. He is really, this defense has been terrible, right? But Damian Lillard and Giannis have helped keep this offense in a place where they can still win at a high level. They're the second seed in the Eastern Conference, and they deserve their flowers. So Damian Lillard, they deserve two All-Stars. Is what I was trying to say. Regardless, he is an All-Star reserve. Here is a better way to put it. But then we move over to the front court where we have Paolo Banchero, Scotty Barnes. I want to show him some love. Bam Adebayo, and then either Julius Randle or Kristaps Porzingis. Whoever you want to throw in there. I think if I had to choose one, I would lean at Julius Randle because Porzingis has kind of fell off. But I think that first, a couple weeks of the season where Porzingis was so hot, you can definitely make an argument. He deserves a spot here at the end of the bench here in the All-Star Eastern Conference. But then we start with Paolo Banchero. I mean, a guy that's taken a step into superstardom. It's his second year in the league. And just like any young rookie going into their second year, you want to see them take a leap, especially if they were the number one overall pick. Paolo Banchero, career highs across the board. He's the leader of an Orlando Magic team that at one point was the number one seed for a good part of the season in the Eastern Conference. And for that start to the year, Paolo deserves his flowers, and he will be an all-star reserve this year in 2024. I do want to say they've kind of fell off after that easy start to the year. However, again, that start to the year was so fun to watch for the Orlando Magic, and they're still fighting each and every night. I still have them, and I still have Paolo, their leader, as an all-star reserve. Kind of looks like a younger, more aggressive Carmelo Anthony. For Scotty Barnes, you can say, hey, their record is so bad you can't have Scotty Barnes on this reserves list. I understand. However, this guy that's also having a career resurgence and a career highs across the board, and now it's and Pascal Siakam out the door. This guy's numbers and his performance and just his skill set is only going to go up going forward. He's only going to become more confident. And again, I get the record perspective. You can say the Raptors just, the 12th in the Western or in the Eastern Conference, 13th in the Eastern Conference. They just haven't won enough games. I understand that argument, but Scotty Barnes to me is a reserve for a reason. It's not like he's a starter, and he is taking his game to that next level. This is his best overall career year, and I'm going to show him some flowers here as a reserve in the Eastern Conference. For Bam Adebayo, he's averaging career highs as far as, the counting stats, 21, 11, and 4. Of course, he is one of the best defensive players, whether if you want to look at the counting stats, whether if you want to look at the deep analytics. Bam Adebayo has kept his team afloat even with Jimmy missing some time there about a couple weeks. Regardless, Bam Adebayo has kept this team as a 4 to 6 seed in the Eastern Conference, and I think Bam is going to be an All NBA defender this season, and I think he deserves his flowers here at the midseason mark. But then we finish off here with Julius Randle. I kind of touched on Porzingis there with his start to the year, but Randle's averaging 25, 9, and 5. The pushback here I would give is maybe saying the Knicks are 5 or 6 seed in the Eastern Conference. Maybe they don't deserve two All-Stars, but I also gave two All-Stars to the Los Angeles Lakers, who are the 11 seed or 10 seed in the Western Conference. Regardless, I think if I had to give it to one, I'd push it to Julius Randle, but both guys definitely deserve their flowers here in 2024. But that is my Eastern Conference bench. Let's move over to the All-NBA snub team. And getting over here to the All NBA snub team, we did this last year. You guys loved the idea. And without further ado, we're going to bring it back here and let's get into it. It's like this is a good, time to mention that if, these players are on this list, it's because they didn't make my all-star ballot, of course. But regardless, let's get into it. You guys will pick up on it as we go. Kyrie Irving, Devin Booker, my all-star bench. or all-star snub team bench. But both these guys are two of the best isolation scorers in the game today. Kyrie Irving is just a wizard with the ball, maybe the best ball handler we've ever seen. Devin Booker, one of the best isolation scorers we've ever seen. He's the next coming of Kobe Bryant. At least that's the vibe you get when you watch him, right? I don't have to sell you guys on how talented and deserving these two guys are for these spots here. But Kyrie Irving just didn't make the list because there's so many talented Western Conference guards that maybe have a better record or better situation where they get more shot attempts or more counting stats, whatever the case was. Kyrie Irving, to me, for keeping this team afloat. Now, when Luka Doncic was out for a week or two, I just think I want to show him some flowers here, and he's just been such a talented player going under the radar. Kyrie is an all-star snub this year. For Devin Booker, again, I just didn't want to give the Suns two starters for the fact that they've been bad record-wise this season. Regardless, again, both these guys, two great guys, as far two great scorers. I don't know them personally, but Kyrie Irving, Devin Booker, all-star starters on the snub team is a good way to put it. But then let's move over to the front court. And I know you see one name glaringly popping out at you. Don't take this list too seriously, right? We're going to go through 12 to 20 players, and there's really no lineup restrictions. The starting lineup, I try to have, two guards and some front court players, even a big, right? Off the bench, there's no lineup restrictions, right? We're just going to be naming a bunch of people that deserve to be an all-star snub. For Derek White, this is just a guy that all championship level teams want on their roster. He's the hard work, dirty work guy that just, he's going to sit in the corner but on offense, and he's going to occasionally drop you 15, 20, 30 points on some nights. Some nights be your second best player. Some nights we've seen him be the best player for the Boston Celtics. But then on the defensive end, he's going to take that tough assignment and lock up the opposing team's best player, or at least minimize them. Here is a good way to put it. Zion Williamson, Alperen Sengun. For Zion, of course, he's on one of the scariest teams in basketball in the New Orleans Pelicans. It's always been the same song and dance for the Pelicans. When they're healthy, when they're all together, when they can find a groove. We always talked about the potential of how good this Pelicans team could be. And this year they're healthy and they found that groove. Shout out to Willie Green, by the way. But Zion has been a really, really good basketball player this year. And again, even though he doesn't have a bag at all, I mean, his bag is, I'm gonna put my shoulder on you, and I'm gonna go up with the foot. I'm gonna go up with the ball. I'm either gonna lay it up or dunk it on you. It's worked, and Zion is having an amazing year, counting stats wise and impact wise. He's also getting a little bit better defensively, even though we want to see him continually to improve, of course. And then Alperen Sengun, he's the leader of this Houston Rockets team, a team that start the year was really surprising. But of course, Ime Udoka has done two amazingly impactful things for this franchise going forward. One, he changed the identity. This is a defensive team, a top 3, top 5 defensive team. And it's just so rare to find young teams like this buy into a system like that and buy into that end of the floor. So shout out to Ime for changing the identity, changing the culture, but then also finding and identifying the guy for this team going forward. That is Alperen Sengun. And I want to show him some flowers there. I think, no doubt, I was saying it last year, they need to turn the keys over from Jalen Green, and they did that this year. They've had some success, and I think on a one-game basis, nobody wants to see this team in the play-in, even the Los Angeles Lakers. But then we get over to the bench, and it's a little funky when we get to the bench because I want to show so many people their flowers. But for the guards here is a good way to put it. We can go with Drew Holiday or Jaylen Brown or both if if you want to put them both on the list. This Celtics team just made the perfect acquisitions this offseason, and all of them have played a major part to why this team only has one loss at home, is the number one team in the NBA, is the number one team in the Eastern Conference, and is currently still my title favorite as far as they were in the preseason. And then Jamal Murray, I mean, he missed some time there, but did you guys see him recently? This is a guy that is just, he doesn't need a lot of time to get back in the groove, and he's just been such an amazing counterpart to Nikola Jokic. And this is the exact reason why they are going to be a front runner to go back-to-back in the NBA Finals. For Franz Wagner, I wanted to show some love to him because, look, this Magic team to start the year was so good. And I think Franz Wagner, of course, Paolo gets his flowers, but nobody really shows love to Franz Wagner. And really, they're going to be shocked if you turn on the tape. Just turn on the tape and watch Franz. He's such a fun player. Of course, these Europeans play the game the right way, but Franz he does really do that, and he makes all the right plays, and he's just a very fun player to watch. Definitely goes underrated on most nights. But then we go over to the front court in the reserves as far as of course, the snub team. We have Victor Wembanyama, Larry Markkinen, Karl Anthony Towns, and Rudy Gobert. For Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert, of course, the big man duo there in Minnesota, of course, the number one team in the Western Conference. And shout out to Karl Anthony Towns. He just dropped 62 points, of course, this past Monday. It's just amazing to see that Karl Anthony Towns' 62-point performance kind of got overshadowed because Joel Embiid, well, he had to go out there and drop 70 points, one of the best games ever. Karl Anthony Towns, not too far behind, 62 points. I'm going to show him his flowers. Rudy Gobert is playing at a Defensive Player of the Year caliber. He's back to where he was in Utah, so I want to show him some flowers. Laurie Markkinen is on one of the hottest teams of basketball in Utah, and I think just with how they've been playing, that this recent stretch isn't a fluke. It could be how this Utah Jazz is for the remainder of the year. Who knows? Maybe they can sneak into the playoffs. For Victor Wembanyama, it's another thing to have. It's one thing to have expectations, but it's another thing to live up to them. One of my famous sayings on this channel, Victor Wembanyama had all of the expectations coming into the year, and he's blowing them out the water. I think ever since he went on a minute restriction, weirdly enough, he's been a better basketball player. And Coach Popovich, I love to see that he stayed another year, really, just to develop this young man and to put this franchise in a position going forward where they're set up. And I think Victor Wembanyama, of course, is the star player. He's everything that we thought, even more at this point in his rookie year. And the sky's the limit for that young man. Hopefully, he could just stay healthy. But some honorable mentions here that didn't really technically make the list. James Harden, of course, making the move over to Los Angeles has been amazing for them. Russell Westbrook is another guy that fits the mold of a snub, right? A guy that championship level teams want. And it's kind of crazy to say because a couple years ago, nobody wanted to touch Russell Westbrook with a 10-foot pole. And now he turns out to be one of the most impactful players. Who knows? Or who knew, right? When you get the right coach that puts you in the right spots, you could be playing at your best level. And I think shout out to Tyronn Lue for that, of course. Some other guys, Chet Holmgren, of course, might be the glaring name missing off this list. Second best player on one of the best teams, one of the youngest teams in the NBA, of course, the second seed in the Western Conference, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Mikal Bridges, even though that team is having a down year statistically wise as far as getting the wins, Mikal Bridges is still having an individually good year. There's some other guys I'm sure I'm missing, but that is the All-Star snub team for 2024. Let me know what you think down in the comments about that, of course. But without further ado, let's get back to the episode, as that is going to do it here for today's video. If you guys enjoyed, of course, drop a like, subscribe to the channel. We do these All-Star ballots twice a year. Of course, we do it 1 month into the year, and then, of course, we do it right before the All-Star break. But without further ado, before we get out of here, just some shout outs to you guys. Of course, we just passed 11,500 subscribers. Shout out to you guys. We're on the road to 12K and then 13 and then 50K, right? Of course, that's down the line and just, wishful thinking. But that is, I want to thank you guys for that, of course. But then All-Star Weekend, I think it's going to be very fun. And also, if you made it to this point, drop a comment. What is your favorite All-Star moment? Is it the Zach LaVine, Aaron Gordon dunk contest? Is it the Steph Curry and Klay Thompson battle in the three-point contest from a few years ago? Is it Karl Anthony Towns beating a guard in the skills competition when that was first implemented? Or is it, of course, going way back to when MJ was hitting game winners? Or, of course, when Kobe passed and they introduced that, the 24-point overtime rule. There's a lot of great, moments, but I just think it's one of the funnest times of the year for even non-basketball fans. Even though there's been arguments lately that just not enough defense is played. I think with the conference split, we might see a little bit more of that going forward. But without further ado, I'm going to stop yapping. Thursday, we have our NFL Conference Championship predictions. We're going to go through top 10 players, our power rankings, literally anything you can imagine for Conference Championship weekend as far as coverage-wise. We're going to do that. Amir will be joining us on Thursday. But that's going to do it for me. Get out of here.